All of Mountaineer Nation is screaming, fire Neal Brown. But we got another game to play. Kansas State is up next. That's the topic. Stick around while we talk about that on Locked On West Virginia.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in, guys. It's been a tough weekend. My name's Mountaineer Paul. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Locked On West Virginia, sponsored by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen every single day, and for being part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your team every single day. For this week's game, I couldn't have a better guest, somebody I am proud to be associated with, and somebody that knows his stuff. Obviously, Big 12-centric, K-State-centric. I call him the voice of the Big 12. It's Mr. John Kurtz. How we doing, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Paul. Great to see you, man.
Yeah, so good weekend for you guys, even though you had some injuries, it sounds like, to a lot of different players, and that could play a factor in this week's game. With West Virginia, obviously, we couldn't take the reins on a possible conference tying lead, and unfortunate, and a lot to talk about with Neal Brown, but there's still a game to play, and these players and a lot of West Virginia's players have tweeted, basically, to summarize, cancel out the noise. We still got another game to play. You have to look at it like that. This is a 3-3 ball club that's only got one loss in the conference, and so we're the same. Obviously, I feel like you're probably the better team, but you know what I'm saying, record-wise.
For sure.
What's the mood like in Manhattan right now, and how do you guys feel about this squad?
Yeah, I think people are feeling better after Saturday. I mean, there were a ton of people picking Colorado to win, myself included, just because we had seen this team really struggle quite a bit on the road, both the previous times that they went out on the road. Like, everybody knows about BYU, obviously, how that just crumbled when they hit some adversity. Really didn't feel like a 29-point game. They were dominating most of the first half, but they weren't punching it in the red zone. And then once adversity hit, they just completely crumbled. And at Tulane, you saw shades of that. Tulane just wasn't quite a good enough team to get all the way over the finish line there, in case they was able to come back and win. But that was my thought going into Colorado. Look, Colorado's a much improved team. That's a legitimate team and a legitimate program right now. They're definitely good enough to exploit K-State's biggest weakness, which is the secondary, which is also coincidentally where all the injuries occurred on Saturday. So that's not great moving forward. But when you added that up with K-State's road struggles, I thought, man, it really feels like this is a spot where Colorado is going to win. So I think the prevailing kind of narrative out of that game for K-State is, and the fan base is like, hey, the team grew up, you know. I mean, they hit plenty of adversity in that game and didn't really flinch. They also were able to just control most of the game. You know, I think at this stage in Avery Johnson's career, though he is getting better as a passer, and you saw that late in the game, they're not a team that's really well structured to come from behind. So you need to be able to utilize DJ Giddens, who's the biggest weapon that this team has, and had a fabulous game on Saturday. You need to be able to just consistently run the ball, play from in front, or at least close to the lead, so that you can continue to use the ground game and keep the other offense off the field. And that's what K-State did really effectively in building a 21-7 lead. But once that happened, all the adversity started to hit, right? I mean, Avery Johnson went out for about 2/3 of a drive when he got injured. And Taquan Roberson, who's a UConn transfer that they picked up in the offseason, started his career at Penn State.
Great last name.
Played a lot of football. Yeah, he that's somebody that stepped in and was kind of an unsung hero in the game. Kept the drive going, converted a big third down with a pass to Jace Brown, and eventually they punch it in. Then after that, Colorado drives down the field, and you have the drive where, you know, Colorado students are booing because K-State had about 4 injuries on that drive to the secondary. But I can assure you, those are guys K-State did not want to be getting hurt, and a couple of them went down with concussions. So that's what will be monitored this week, is the availability there, including Jacob Parrish, who is by far K-State's best player in the secondary. So that was tough. Marquise Siegel also had an injury. He's the best safety. Justice James, who's probably corner number 3, but you might argue he's been the second best corner on the roster so far this year. So A lot of stuff went wrong is the point there. And I know Colorado had injuries too, obviously to Travis Hunter, most prominent of all those, but they battled through it. And even after giving up the lead and turning it over late and the interception turning into the go-ahead TD for Colorado, K-State drove 84 yards in 3 plays, making the big plays in the passing game and doing it when there was all kinds of adversity in a tough road environment. Those are all the things we had questions about with this team before. So I think it just represented a stage of growth. I think this team grew quite a bit on Saturday, and that's a really welcome sight for K-State fans to see.
And not a better time to do it. Nobody can argue the road hostility to West Virginia, especially at night. I couldn't believe the absolute show they put on for the coal miners. The show, I mean, they had drones flying around doing messages in the sky with the blackout. The stage was set for West Virginia to really take the reins on this season. I personally feel like the talent was pretty close to Iowa State. I didn't feel at any point that they were way better than us. It was truly just critical errors that lost us that football game. And basically, you guys are the opposite of an Iowa State in the way I look at it in a lot of ways. They've got 2 NFL wide receivers. You guys have good receivers, don't get me wrong. But they want to run it to throw it. You guys are more of a run-centric team just in general, that the Avery Johnson's coming along with the other part of that. It's, Rocco Beck can already do that as far as throwing the football. West Virginia's been good against the run. That's the one thing I can say, except against Hansen. That kid was really good last week for them, but big running back, and maybe that Giddens would be an answer. But I think looking at this game, if West Virginia can stop the run, this might be a game that can actually stay in a little bit, more so than like Iowa State, where they've got 2 legit NFL receivers that provide so many matchups.
Yeah, I mean, the Iowa State passing attack is definitely on a different level. I mean, Higgins and Knoll are incredible, and Rocco Becht is just so rock solid. Like Iowa State, I was just writing this for my Big 12 newsletter, Open for Business, but when you talk about BYU, Iowa State, who should be number 1 in the Big 12 right now, if you're doing like power rankings, like I favor Iowa State. You could argue that BYU has a better resume, but I just think Iowa State has more ways to beat you because of that passing game. Like, and that's, they can weather slow starts because they have the passing game to do it. K-State's not that. It is getting better though. I mean, I will tell you, it is getting better. It's coming along. Jace Brown is I think a very good. He's a very good Big 12 receiver, and he showed it late in that Colorado game. But yeah, if you stop the run, and if I were West Virginia, for a number of reasons, I would just be loading up the box as much as possible. Now Colorado did a lot of that too, and DJ Giddens still rushed for 182 yards. I think there is a notion out there that Colorado's run defense is just awful because it was awful last year. They've actually been pretty average this year against the run and improving, like rapidly improving. They held UCF 200 yards below their season average on the ground, and they had not allowed a 100-yard rusher yet this year. And DJ Giddens still gashed them for $182. So some of that is like DJ Giddens is just ridiculous. I mean, he's as good at kind of moving in a phone booth and making guys miss. Just ask Shiloh Sanders about that.
That was a good clip.
Yeah, as anybody in the country. So, I mean, he is really good, but you not only need to try and stop DJ Giddens, but Avery Johnson, I wonder what his mobility is going to be like on Saturday. Because that was going to be
my next question.
Yeah, in the post-game press conference after the game, Chris Kleiman said that they did not have the option, basically, of using Avery Johnson's legs once he returned from injury. They didn't want to push that. And I think the injury actually happened on a play. He picked up a first down on like a 3rd and 10 running the ball where he kind of got shoved forward the last 2 or 3 yards. And I think it was at that point when he was taking a lot of contact that happened. And if you watch him run throughout the year, he shies away from contact. He's running and he wants to run to get out of bounds. Like he's still a guy that is making business decisions out there a lot of times. And so if I'm West Virginia, I'm challenging that. How much quarterback run do you actually have in your playbook? How much will that be available? You definitely have to force K-State to throw the ball.
Up next on Locked On West Virginia, we're going to do the next segment, get into these impact players. Who is it for K-State that West Virginia should be worried about? A lot of players. Who is it that K-State should maybe worry about? A couple players. We'll get into that next on Locked On West Virginia. Stick around. This episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find a quality professional that's right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn hires you professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn's users don't use other job sites. So if you're not looking for on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire a professional, like your professional, on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. We're back with John Kurtz. On this episode of Locked On West Virginia, we're going to talk about impact players in this game, which there are a few to worry about. Keys to the game as well, John, if you can. First, give me some impact players West Virginia should be looking at. Obviously, we know about Avery Johnson. We know about Giddens, and we know about Jace Brown. Who else should we were worried about, and who's going to be injured? Do we know? Like those kind of things as far as offensively, defensively.
Yeah, I think injury report wise, I'll be interested to hear what, Chris Kleiman has his press conference. I think it's actually going on right now as we're recording. Be interested to hear what he has to say specifically about it. I'm guessing there's no way to really know about a lot of those guys in the secondary. Right. I do believe Marquise Siegel came back into the game, who was the safety, K-State's best safety. So I'd expect if there's anybody on that list that is going to be able to play, he would be there. Jacob Parrish, as I mentioned, it looked like a concussion. They took his helmet away, and he did not return once he went out of the game. He had a concussion last year and wound up missing the next week. So, if that's any kind of precedent, there's a good chance that he would be out, and that'd be a big loss for K-State. He's definitely the best cover corner that they have. Justice James, I believe, is also a concussion, perhaps. I don't know that for sure, but that's the speculation there. So he may be another one that's like up in the air, and he's kind of been corner 3 this year. Keenan Garber is the other one. He had a cramp, so he was out for a little bit against Colorado, but just a cramp, and he came back in the game. So that, I think, is pretty much the injury report. I'm sure Avery Johnson will play, but again, the question becomes his actual mobility there.
Yeah.
Another guy I would point out, just in terms of impact players beyond, like we've obviously discussed, like DJ Giddens. I think he may well, it's probably between him and Taj Brooks for who's the best running back in the Big 12 right now. But on the defensive side of the ball, like Brendan Mott was completely unblockable for Colorado. Now their offensive line really struggles, but he was only credited with 2 sacks. It felt like he was in the backfield all the time, and he's leading the Big 12 right now in sacks with 6. And he's kind of a typical K-State guy. Like, he was not a highly recruited player at all, very small. Still is not a very big guy, but he's just really crafty and kind of a grinder, works his butt off, a lot of effort, sacks. But he's really stepped his game up and has turned into a great player as far as the pass rush is concerned. So I think that's something to watch out for. It's going to be tougher this week. Like Garrett Green, I don't think K-State's seen a quarterback yet this year who can really like run to scramble for yardage like Garrett Green can. Like Shador and Noah Fafita, guys like that can make you miss to uncork it down the field, but they haven't seen somebody who's going to be able to run up the field the way that Garrett Green has. Right. So maybe it's not quite as big a factor there this week, but Mott is definitely someone who's having an outstanding season for them. And then, in the linebacker core, like Desmond Purnell, I think is having a borderline all Big 12 type of year, probably K-State's best linebacker. And he's a guy that you'll see flying around quite a bit. And they will definitely need him because West Virginia has a very good ground game. And I know that, when you talk about concerns for K-State, obviously, like the secondary goes without saying with the injury issues, and that's been a weak point all year. But also, we know that West Virginia has a really strong ground game. That has been the strongest area by far of K-State's defense is shutting down opposing rushing attacks. But they're going to need all hands on deck, I think, to do that this week.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about Avery Johnson and him having possibly a bad wheel, I would say that TJ Jackson's definitely in the Brendan Mott category as far as a guy that just pressures the quarterback on an elite level. He was leading the Big 12 in pressures, not necessarily sacks, coming into last week. A lot of times where he plays defensive tackle, a lot of times quarterbacks are quicker than him in a phone booth and make him miss, but he gets back there a lot. Mm-hmm. And he has a lot of tackles for loss on running backs. So he's extremely hard to block. He was in the backfield all against Rocco Beck several times during the game, continuing to do that. So like a guy, Bowman, he was back there all day. They didn't have a chance to throw the ball at all. And so that'll be a big factor, I think, in the game. Obviously, when you talk about West Virginia impact players, it starts and really ends on the offensive line. They've got 3 legit NFL guys. It really makes a lot of us mad that we didn't rely on the ground game after that initial opening 14-play, 75-yard drive. Then to try to turn Garrett Green into Will Greer for the rest of the game, just a lot of us are still scratching our heads while Neal Brown didn't stick to the thing that won in the game against Oklahoma State. We get it. Iowa State has a better defense than Oklahoma State, and so does K-State. But you were still able to turn out a 14-yard drive in that game. He's got to stick to the plan in this game, whether it's working or not. We have 2 all Big 12 caliber running backs. The best left tackle in the Big 12 hasn't allowed a sack in 3 years, hasn't allowed a pressure in 3 years. You got to let that guy do work, So unfortunately, Garrett Green, not the best pocket passer. That's going to be an interesting thing in this game to see which one of those wins out. It's going to be strength on strength, and it's really going to be fun to see which one wins. Your front 7 against our front 5. I can't wait to watch that, and hopefully Neal Brown sticks with a plan in that game. For me, the keys on this one have to be, I think West Virginia has to win time of possession in this game. This has been a key to victory under Neal Brown. Anytime Neal Brown wins the time of possession, he wins a lot more than he loses. When a West Virginia team holds the time of possession, a lot of that's been protecting the defense, especially this year. Obviously, you guys are probably going to have to throw it a bit more, and I think limiting Jace Brown is going to be a huge factor in this game. And we can't let Giddens go off either, no doubt. But for me, the other factor is, can Garrett Green actually throw the ball in this game when he needs to? Because he's going to have to. Not going to be able to run it on K-State all day. So I think that's going to be the factors. You got to be able to sustain drives. West Virginia leads. This is another thing that Neal Brown didn't do that he has done in every other game. West Virginia leads the country. They're 12 of 14 on 4th down. He didn't go for 4th down, not once. He kicked field goals last week. I think he got conservative, and I like that mentality where he just goes for things. Maybe that switches this week, and maybe he just continues to try to make these 4 downs instead of 3 downs when we get in plus territory.
It's interesting you bring that up. Chris Kleiman, I thought, did a much better job of being aggressive in the game against Colorado. First touchdown K-State scored was on a 4th down. Even the play that turned into the long interception return for Colorado, I think that was kind of you're in no man's land. I would have expected Kleiman to probably try to kick a field goal in years past, but that would have only put you up 6, giving the ball back to Colorado. He's actually going for it, so I think we've seen a little bit of evolution in terms of him being more aggressive, which that was definitely not the hallmark of the early part of his tenure at K-State. I think, keys-wise, 2 things I would single out, and I think it is kind of similar on both sides because both sides are going to want to run the ball, and both sides, I think, are pretty good at stopping the run. It's going to come down to me to 2 things. Who can develop more success in the passing game?
Very similar to offenses.
Yeah, perhaps with a lot of it coming from the quarterbacks getting out on the move a bit. I think both quarterbacks are better when they're actually moving outside of the pocket, even if that is just to throw the ball downfield as opposed to just utilizing their legs. I think both quarterbacks are at their best when they're being playmakers like that. So who is going to have more of an opportunity to do that and have the better passing game? And then the other thing I would just single out too is turnovers, because I think both offenses have had some issues with that this year. K-State certainly has. I know Garrett Green has 6 picks this year. So these offenses have gotten into trouble when they've turned the ball over. And as we've seen before with K-State, that can snowball quickly. It seemed like they got better about that at Colorado, but it can be an issue. So if one of these defenses can come up with a couple of turnovers, I think that will go a long way. And I think there will probably be interceptable balls out there. We're talking about 2 quarterbacks that have had some struggles with that, and they're probably going to have to, be forced to throw the ball up more so than maybe you would like in this type of a game. So I'd look out for success in the passing game, and then who's going to come up with turnovers.
Love those keys, man. All right, guys. So up next on Locked On West Virginia, to give a prediction and a score. Who does John think is going to win the game? It might shock you. Stick around. This is Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you in part by Game Time. That's right, Game Time. The best ticketing place in the industry is what Game Time has been called. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats. You can see views seats before you buy. You can look in a 360 panoramic view, give you the best idea of where you'll be seated. There's a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They'll even give you 110% of the difference if you're not satisfied. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but create the account, Locked On College, and get $20 off. Download the Game Time app and ask yourself, what time is it? It's game time. Back with John Kurtz here on Locked On West Virginia, talking about K-State, West Virginia. It's going to be an interesting game, John. It's going to be nighttime again, the second night game in a row for us. What kind of road environments has K-State been in this year that's going to match up to a night game in Morgantown with the new light system and everything we have going on there? It's truly an awesome experience, obviously very similar to Manhattan.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, I've been there. I was there in 12, 14, 16, and 18. So I've been to 4 games there. I know at least 2 of those, the first 2, 12 and 14, were definitely night games. That 12 game, I know it got out of hand.
That's that Table in Austin return?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it was not a close game, but it was really hyped up in the beginning. And so like the atmosphere at the beginning of that game was electric. So I've seen Morgantown up for a huge game, and I would put it up against basically anything in the conference. Yeah. I do think the good thing about K-State's season so far is that they experienced BYU in a late night situation. And I was there at that one too. And man, I mean, I tell you what, like, I know we think of BYU fans as being nice, and they are very nice and friendly, but they are also loud. And they've got 63K at Lavelle Edwards in a night game, like super late night slot. They've played now in this Big 12 after dark spot twice, and so that was an elite environment, man. I've been a lot of places. That BYU environment definitely ranks up there as among the best that I've seen. When they hit that punt return that went 100 yards, it was like the press box felt like it was shaking a little bit there. So they've been in really tough environments. Now, they haven't always handled it well. The other road game was Tulane, which, was like a sleepy 11 a.m. kind of rainy. That was not a very difficult environment. But the
probably
last
similar
two,
to Marshall.
Yeah. But the last 2, BYU and then Colorado, I know, like, you don't think of Colorado as like, historically may be the wrong word. The last 20 years, you don't think of them as having a great environment, but they are pretty juiced up now that, they've got celebrities hanging out on the sidelines, Kevin Durant, John Wall, Cameron, all these guys were on the sideline on Saturday. Student sections filled up. Like it was pretty loud and late, and they're a very hostile, angry crowd. So, I think that one was also tough, probably not on BYU level, probably not quite on West Virginia level. They've seen it, though, I guess is the point. It's not going to totally shock them. It will just be, do you get more of a composed effort like they had in Boulder, where they're able to also, by the way, a big part of that was they controlled the first 2/3 of the game, so the crowd couldn't get into it. They had long, sustained drives. That drive to start the third quarter that Avery Johnson got hurt, it took 7.5 minutes. I mean, it took half the quarter. So when you're doing that and you're just pummeling teams by running it down their throat, that neutralizes the crowd a lot. So if you get that sort of a game flow, that could go a long way toward helping them out a lot. But if you start turning it over and you're not punching it in the red zone and keeping the other team in the game, and then just let things get totally out of hand, then we've seen what that can do to K-State too. So they are, I would say, pretty experienced with at least similar type environments to what they're going to see. But some of those results have been good. Some of those results have been not so good.
If I had to guess, I would say that Kleiman's message to you guys is 1 week at a time. It'd be hard for them not to recognize you're tied for first place in the league. I think Neal Brown has to tell the West Virginia players something similar. Hey, look, the only team you've lost to is probably going to play in the Big 12 championship game. So really, it's almost like being undefeated, because even if let's say you win out or even lose one more, you're probably still going to be in the conversation. So there's a lot to play for, is my point. And you have to pitch it that way if you're Neal Brown. We just got to hope the messaging isn't getting stale, John. Saturday makes 3-14 versus top 25 teams. Some have been legit, some have not. One of those three was an 8-win K-State football team. So maybe he can do it again. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of us that aren't confident. I'll just tell you that. It's down to that point of apathy. We're talking about 6 years at West Virginia, top 15 all-time winning in both sports program, going unranked for 6 years. We're all so mad about it. With that said, John, I need a prediction from you, man, and a score if you can give it. I'll go first. So okay. I think this is a game West Virginia can win. I don't think it's a game that's out of our league by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't trust Neal Brown. I don't trust him to make any kind of critical thinking changes at all, because he's shown just that. He won't make any. There's going to be any changes. If what's working or what he thinks should work isn't working, there's going to be very few deviations outside of that. So the plan they go in there with better work. Because if it doesn't, you guys are walking out of here still tied with first place. I got K-State 31-23.
Yeah, I think, first of all, one thing to point out is that this is a really big game on both sides because of what you said. I mean, West Virginia is very much still in the race, and we were talking about this a minute ago. I think for both teams, the schedule starts to ease up a bit once you get past this game. And so, I know as K-State fans, we're looking at it like, all right, suddenly the Colorado, West Virginia, like back-to-back road trip. Always knew that would be pretty tricky just because you're going, you're traveling across 3 different time zones. You had the very 9:30 Central Time kickoff in Boulder, and now you're going to play in Morgantown to cut down on probably some of what they could do on Sunday to get ready. It's a tough travel spot that K-State is in here. But once they get past that, I mean, Kansas is next week, and I mean, I'm not going to look totally past that game, but obviously they're 1-5 right now.
Enjoy it.
It's like Houston, Cincinnati, Arizona State, home games against the latter two there coming up. Now they have been, obviously, no disrespect to Arizona State, they've been much better. But I think in name value, at least, you feel like the schedule may become more manageable after this game, and you could really get on a roll before you have to go to Ames at the end of the year. So that's how K-State.
What a game that could be.
So it could be a huge one. And I know
Armageddon for real.
Yeah. And I know that West Virginia is looking at this kind of the same, that you could get a bit of not that there's a total breather, but maybe a little bit more manageable of a schedule and be 3-1 in the Big 12. So there's a lot on the line here.
Sure.
I do think because of all those factors, I mean, secondary injuries, tough second straight road trip, Morgantown's a difficult place to play. You're getting another night game. I can tell you for sure that all of us were hoping for like an 11 a.m. kickoff. I don't think the night thing helps anything from K-State standpoint. I do think it'll be a close game. I'm going like 27-21 K-State, something like that right now is my feel here early in the week. But I think it'll be a one-score game, and I think the line in Vegas obviously reflects that, and a lot of what people looking at this game see a lot of the same things we just discussed.
What is West Virginia? I think they match exactly what Neal Brown is. The teams they've lost to are now 18-0. That's what they've lost to.
Yeah.
And they beat Albany, K-State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas. Can you say middling without saying Neal Brown's name? I don't know, but that's pretty dang middling. Frustrating, man. So there it is. There's the prediction, guys. Thank you for listening to me rant and a little bit here. And John always brings excellent analysis on K-State and Big 12 stuff. Before we let you guys go, we're going to let you know where John can be found. Obviously, on the bottom there, you see @JL Kurtz, burned into my memory from seeing it so many times now. And then the Big 12 newsletter. John, tell them about that a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, if you guys want Big 12 news straight to your inbox, I'm cutting through all the Big 10 and SEC stuff. You're not getting any of that in there because when you see these big stories about college football, a lot of times you're going to get the Big 10 and SEC perspective on that. So I'm filtering all that out for you. It is called Open for Business, Big 12 newsletter, again, totally free to your inbox right now, 3 times a week during the season. So you can go to ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to get signed up for that. And then, yeah, check out the YouTube channel, just my name, JOHNKURTZ.
Really quick before we get off here, what would be so funny is if you can get the old rapper ODB to rewrite the song for OFB. Yeah, me.
That'd be great. If I were covering Colorado, I might have a legit shot at that happening. I might see the guy on the sideline.
OFB. Yeah, me. Anyways, that's probably a really corny attempt at a joke, guys, but that's what you get here. John, thanks for coming on, man. It's been fun. Hopefully no more injuries this Saturday.
Yeah.
I hope to see a fun game and would love to come out of this one with a win. But I always root for Klieman and K-State because you guys as a fan base are just always awesome to deal with from our end. Obviously, that's not so much on the plains with other teams, but we love dealing with you guys and wish you the best of luck.
Hey, appreciate it. I love West Virginia too. My favorite trip when I was doing this full time and traveling all the time, my favorite trip in the league was to Morgantown. Such a unique, cool atmosphere and setting for a game. So, yeah, appreciate all you guys. I'll do it anytime.
Thank you guys for making Locked On West Virginia your first listen today. If I could make a suggestion for your second listen, check out the Locked On Big 12 podcast. Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news, and he definitely holds no punches when it comes to covering every team in the Big 12. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. St. Bill Snyder. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll see you next time. We're out.